My name is Isabel Clough. I am a propulsion development engineer, and I've been doing this for about 2.5 years. My day job is testing rocket engines. So most of the time, I split my time between our manufacturing facility, where we build rockets in Long Beach, California, and our test facility in Mojave, California, where we test the rockets. And so a typical day in my life looks like running engine testing. So kind of the propulsion system that makes the rocket go up, the place where the fire comes out at the bottom, kind of the whole propulsion system of the rocket is the area of interest that I have. So how you get propellant from the tanks to the engine, and then how you burn that propellant in the engine, and how you use that as propulsion to go to space. That system is the system that I get to test on a day-to-day basis. So I'm an engineer. That's the discipline that I'm trained in and what I do for work. And it really incorporates science and math and everything kind of under one discipline. We use math and science to kind of design our hardware, and then engineering is kind of the application of those to really go build the hardware. So I do math on a day-to-day basis. I don't even think of it as math anymore. It kind of is just like work. What I do for work is a lot of programming, kind of computer science applications of math to automate the math that I do for work. I do a lot of data review. So we run engine tests, which means that we take the rocket engines, we put them on a test stand, and then we test fire them. And we get a lot of data back from our sensors. So a lot of the data reduction that we do is a lot of math. Mostly it's pretty simple math. So if you've taken physics yet and you've done kind of F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration, Newton's second law, most of engineering is just different ways of applying that Newton's second law. It's not necessarily the super high level math that you end up learning in college. Engineering ends up being mostly just learning how to apply the math that you really already learned in high school. So I kind of, you know how like when you're in elementary school, you want to be a microbiologist, and then you want to be an archaeologist, and then a marine biologist, like all of the go through steps, and then you want to be an astronaut. And I just never outgrew the astronaut phase. So when I was 12, I don't actually remember what started it, but I must have read some book about space and was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. Space facts are the coolest genre of facts, in my opinion. And so I kind of throughout middle and high school, read as many books about space facts as I could and gathered as many space facts as I could. And when I got to college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I was interested in space, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to be an engineer or a physicist or do astronomy. So I just took a bunch of different classes and centered on what I thought was interesting. So I started out kind of doing physics, and then decided that really what I was actually interested in was the applications of physics and how you use physics to build things. And that's really what engineering is how you use physics to build things. Outside of my classes, I did a lot of things with our rocketry club, and let me build rockets and send them up into the air and get to watch them do cool things. That was, I think, really what convinced me that building the rockets and building the spacecraft was the thing that was most interesting to me about space. So I was interested in space in high school. It became clear to me that college was a logical next step for pursuing that. And so I went to college. I decided that I was interested in studying engineering. And then I realized that even within engineering, there were kind of a lot of different applications for what I wanted to do. So I could go into kind of the government sector of space and work at NASA. I could go into academia and work in a science lab, or an engineering research lab, or I could work in kind of a private company. So something like Lockheed Martin or Boeing or SpaceX or Blue Origin. And so with the 3 summers of college, I did 3 different internships in each of those areas. So the first summer, I worked in a lab in college, and then I worked at a lab within my department. And it was cool, but I decided it wasn't for me. And then the second summer, I went and worked at NASA. And again, it was cool, but I decided it wasn't for me. So I was really hoping that the whole space company thing worked out when I finally got to that third summer. And I worked at a company called Virgin Orbit, and it was really, really cool. And it was definitely for me. And so it took me a few years through college, even knowing that I wanted to do space things, to really figure out, okay, what's the niche within space that I'm interested in? What's the path that I want to take within this large field? And so then after college, when I graduated, I got a full-time offer from Virgin Orbit, where I had interned that final summer, which is, I think, a pretty common path for people in engineering to kind of follow the internship to a full-time position after college, especially your junior year of college. Um, and so then I started working as a propulsion development engineer at Virgin Orbit. So that's kind of how I got to where I am. The projects that I've worked on that are the most interesting and the days at work that have been the most interesting are when things break. So in design of any kind of engineering hardware, you kind of have a theory. I've designed it to work in this way. You can do analysis to prove with computer programs that you think it's going to work the way that you designed it to. But when you test it, there's just stuff that happens that you couldn't possibly have accounted for in design. And so test is this really cool place where all of the systems integrate together and you find the gaps that nobody was looking at. For rockets, it's really common that the structures team and the propulsion team and the avionics team designed their pieces separately to work together, but they've never actually had to work together until they get to the test stand. And so when you test things, things break a lot, which can be really frustrating, but it's also the coolest part of the job because it means I get to do a lot of problem solving and a lot of troubleshooting. The days where we run a test and everything goes perfectly, we don't really learn a lot because all you learn is like, yes, your design worked, cool. Everything was exactly as you thought it was. When something breaks, you learn 10 times more because something happened that you weren't expecting, which means that like there's some information that you didn't have before. That's the coolest part of my job. If you're interested in space, the first thing that I did was just to read about it. If you find yourself in your free time wanting to read about something, that's a good indication that you're going to want to spend 8 hours a day working on it. I found that the most helpful ways for me to figure out really what little piece of something I was interested in was to talk to people who are already doing it and not getting discouraged if you hit roadblocks. When I was applying for internships for my first summer of college, I sent out 40 applications and I got 20 rejection letters and the other 20 didn't even respond. And I was like, oh no, what if I can't be an aerospace engineer? And then the next year, I sent out a bunch more applications and got a bunch more rejection letters. And then the third year, I sent out a bunch more applications, and all of a sudden, they were interested just because I was a third year in school. And so, never ever getting discouraged by a bad test grade or a rejection letter for an internship. If you're genuinely interested in something, you'll get there. It'll happen, and it'll happen at its own pace.